John, so let's talk more about the part where you came up with the project and how you decided to do something to help people in yoga poses, right?
Yeah, I think there are like 2 points, like 2 different things that came to me. One of them is like what kind of like aspects of machine learning or deep learning I'm interested and I want to work on, and the other one is like what kind of problem do I either experience day to day or I know is a problem for a lot of people, and that's why I came up with this idea of trying to detect yoga poses and checking if it's a good or bad form. First of all, I wanted to work with. I was pretty interested in everything around image processing and CNNs and video processing and detection. So that was great to work on that. And on the other hand, with the lockdown, I think that a lot of people got into doing yoga at home and everything, and then you don't really have feedback from a professional teacher in that regard. So it's like, how can you potentially help people at one point getting checking the pose, like, okay, this is good form, this is bad form, you should improve that way or that way. Obviously that's very ambitious. So the way I thought about it was in like several steps. So I kind of like basically broke down the problem in like several mini steps. And the first one was, for example, how do I get a decent yoga pose detector, and then like how do I check if it's like bad form or good form, and then afterwards I had to stop at that point, but afterwards you could go to if it's bad form, which part of the body is it coming from, like how do you help the person improve their form. And by doing that I had like some smaller milestones I could hit, and I think that's important for 2 different reasons. One of them is it helps you break down the day-to-day work a bit better, right? It's less ambitious than just building this ultimate product, but you kind of like building a bit more, and that comes from my experience as a product manager at different companies. And the other point is also great to be able to finalize something, and for your own motivation, be like, okay, like this is great, like I've done that, and then I can look at the next goal.
Right. This is actually kind of an interesting moment for me to realize that you actually went from, not having a technical background, being a product person, to finishing a product on your own, like just, we normally advise people to do teams because you move faster and you can build bigger things. You build the entire thing, a working demo that actually works just by yourself.
Yeah.
So the transformation is like, it's like super impressive, right? Do you think your experience as a product person at Airbnb or in Ocean, like, can you tell us more about what you reuse from those experiences for this?
Yeah, so I think that I definitely, so working at Airbnb, like in data, even though it was like not technical, like machine learning engineer or whatnot, like definitely gave me this affinity for data work, and not only being able to work with data, but especially to how do we use data in the industry, right? Like, how does it lead to building new products or improving products? Mm-hmm. So I think that's very important to be able to make it concrete in a way. When I was a product manager in the other companies, I think that that really helped me break down the project in smaller steps, and like how to get to each of them. And also like what is doable, what is not doable, trying to give having this kind of idea of how long each product would take. That helped me prioritize different things. I think that was pretty important to consider the different ways I could tackle that problem, but also help me decide which way was probably the best with the constraint I had, which were around time and, as you said, resources. I was by myself. And I think that really helped. Having this experience really helped me, streamlining the project.
Tell me more about where you want to go with it. So you kind of wanted to try to get a company out of it, right? So I keep pushing people in that direction, but most people don't want to go that far because let's be honest, you are depleting your savings by the time you are out of the course. You want to have a new revenue source as soon as possible, right? But in your case, that may not be the case because, Ocean Protocol is doing well and probably Airbnb too. So you have a cushion. So then you have kind of enough cushion to try it and try to build a company, right?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I feel like talking to a lot of people who come to DSR, or, a lot of people would like to like launch their own company at one point. They like to launch their own product. So I think it's important, first of all, to have classmates like that, because that's really motivating and gives inspiration and everything. Then, it is very, very, very challenging. If it were not, more people would be creating companies, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think DSR really gives, gives an indication of like what you could be doing as a product. Whether then you carry on doing it or not that's another topic. But I think that going from zero, like the ideation part, the building part, the presentation part, it is in a way a very shortened way of building a POC that then you can show investors, right? You have to go through like just 3 different stages to get initial funding. I think that's definitely a good training. And you can, depending on how the project goes and the product, there might be some helps also you can get from the government, etc. So it's also, there's this option.
Oh yeah, I can help you with that. I got that funding. I think you're talking about the CIST, right? So if you want to go through that, I can help you. Yeah. So one interesting topic. Mm-hmm. I know one person from New York who was in Berlin and saw people running around with hardware prototypes. So the startup was not just source code, but hardware, right? And he said to me, well, this hasn't happened in New York. You cannot get to the point of having a hardware prototype in New York without funding. Yeah. And this is happening now quite often. Basically, every batch is a hardware prototype. And he said, well, in New York, you will get funding just with that prototype. Yeah. And also, that's good for you. A friend of mine who is a kind of main investor of one of the bigger firms here told me about a previous project that is very similar to yours, but was doing gym stuff instead of yoga, gym positions. He told me, get one client, one gym using this, and you get funding to the tune of 2 million or so. And that was like totally from friend to friend. It's like no bullshit, no like, oh, maybe. No. He was serious, right? Mm-hmm. So there is money in the market for this. I feel not qualified enough to get you guys to that point. Yeah. But you can hear it happening, right? So it's just because I don't have resources to kind of sustain you until you get to that conversation, right? Yeah. But yeah, it's in the air.
Yeah, I think there's also no better point right now in time. I mean, there's so much money that's waiting to be invested right now. That I'm not saying that any project can get funding, but it is definitely easier than it used to be to get funding for a project. Yeah. And Berlin is a great place for that because the cost of life is reasonable still, and there's really good tech talent here for a city of this size in Europe. And it's only growing. And I think that also the other part of Berlin is that it is resolutely international as a city nowadays. So that means that when you start a project or a company here, you are thinking internationally from the early days, which might not be the case in other places, especially.
Oh, yes, that is very true because the local market is kind of limited. That's true every country in Europe, right? Yeah. Maybe less so in Germany, it's 80 million people, but still no company that I know of in technology caters to only the 80 million people in Germany.
Yeah, but also I think Berlin has this advantage compared to like other cities in Europe where, if you build a company here, it is extremely unlikely that all your team members will be from the same country. So your team will be international. And if you have a team that's international, that just pushes you to think about your product being international. Whereas if you're in France, which as Paris has its own pros compared to Berlin for sure, but there's a good chance the whole team is going to be French, and then you might not think international first. You will think France first, and then you might lose the opportunity to like go international quickly enough.
That's very true, and there are actually very good examples of mostly rocket teams going to other localities and killing it with a product that is well tested and well known in some parts of the West, and they go to Southeast Asia or
doesn't work.
And then they just make bank there, just cloning that. That is kind of a specialty here. Yeah. Basically, let's look at what Silicon Valley is producing and make a clone somewhere else where they don't have it.
Yeah. That's rocket for you.
That's rocket, yeah. Cool. Okay, so that was very cool. So if you have anything else to add, I mean, we will edit it and so on. But yeah.
I was thinking about like what you said about I mean, I could say something about sure, like I had some experience about product management or working in product teams. I think that's
absolutely.
I think that it's more than the experience. It's also a mindset that you can have, that anyone can have, which is the, understanding. It basically comes down to the idea that you have and the constraints that you have. And I think that everyone who, has thought about it a bit doesn't need to have job experience around that to be able to really bring about a really interesting project at DSR, right? Like it helps, sure, but it's not necessary. And I think that a lot of projects have proven that. But this idea that you have, that it's better to deliver, this idea of like it's the continuous integration, continuous development kind of thing like that, where it's okay, like everything I do is going to improve a little bit and it can show an improvement. I think it's a mindset that you don't need job experience in the industry to have it, but it will really help for the project.
Yeah, very interesting. There's also something to be said about the different backgrounds of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, there was Masanori, one Japanese guy who came to Berlin to do DSR. As he landed, he looked at the floor and he goes like, "Oh, this is very uncomfortable for wheelchair users." Like, I've been here for 11 years. I never paid attention to the floor in Berlin, right? This kind of diversity is very valuable for creating products, right?
Yeah, I think it's great. Like, I mean, if I look at my own batch, it was, we had people from all around the world, from South America to, the subcontinent to the rest of Europe, also like, Asia. And it was great to have that because then you have like different ideas and it was definitely a very special context that we had with the pandemic, but you can feel that even with the restrictions, it was very good for like ideation and sharing ideas and helping each other out.
Yeah, you will always have each other after 3 months of really going super hard, even weekends at this. That's an experience that will bound you forever, basically.
Exactly.
Anybody that you need in the future that is from your batch or from any previous batch, they understand what you went through. So if you start a company and you want to hire them, you kind of know each other.
No, that's very true. That's definitely very true.